Hi, I'm Stu. Welcome back to another LumaFusion video tutorial. The last two videos that I've created have revolved around creating chroma key transitions. But what if you want to create a chroma key asset from a still image and get things moving a little bit? Well, today I'm going to give you 3 examples of creating chroma key assets from still images, starting with a landscape, then onto a MacBook, and then finally the ship's porthole. Let's get started. For this first image, we're going to work inside Photoshop for iPad. I'm going to choose the quick selection tool, and then I'm just going to drag from top left down to bottom right, and that will pick up everything I need in the sky. From there, I'm just going to go to the paintbrush tool and tap on a nice green screen color around about there. Increase the brush size, and then just quickly fill in the sky area. Then do Command D, and we can then save this out. So we tap Quick Export and then just Save Image, and that's it ready now for the sky to be added into the background. Okay, I'm now in Art Studio Pro for this particular image. Yes, I could do it in Photoshop, but I just thought I'd show you Art Studio Pro as well. For those of you who have followed the channel for a while, you'll know that Art Studio Pro is pretty much my go-to image editing app on iPad. Just going to zoom in a little bit. And then starting at the bottom right hand corner, I'm going to draw out a rectangle, making sure I keep to the lines, which is difficult to see, but probably about there. That looks pretty good. And what we'll do is just select Transform Selection, and then I can now play with the perspective a little bit, place that out a bit, go back to adjusting the bottom line. I don't want the ratio option, so I'm going to switch that off, and that's looking pretty good. Tap the tick, just zoom back out, see where we're at, and then from here I'm going to drop a blank layer, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Color Fill, and choose an appropriate green. There we go, and again tap the tick to close down the layers just now, Command D, and that's looking pretty good. That'll work for me, so we'll just tidy up the layer, close down that, save it out so that I can come back to later on if I want to, and then from here we're just going to do a quick export to PNG, and then we can open this up in LumaFusion. For our final chroma key asset, which is the ship's porthole, I'm in Procreate. And Procreate's an app I've had for quite a long time, but it's only up until recently that I've actually started to use it more and more. So we're going to tap on the porthole chroma key asset, then from there I'm going to tap on my layers, generate a new layer, and then we want to use the selection tool. Now we're going for an ellipse, which you can see highlighted down here in blue, the add option, and color fill. And to make sure the color fill is working properly, we're selecting our bright chroma key green. Then from there, we're going to draw out as best an ellipse as we can. It doesn't have to be overly accurate at this point. Switch off our selection tool and switch on our control points. From there, make sure you're in freeform and not uniform, otherwise things can get a little bit haywire. And then just pull out the corners until you match and meet up the whole image. And then if you do what I just did there, you just go back into the control points and effectively the move tool. You just pull it down at the bottom. Now what we want to be doing is just getting rid of the bright white, but we want to keep a little bit of that key line edge around the porthole. It just takes a little bit of finessing, and that's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit more at the bottom. Quite happy with that. Tap on our move tool, that looks pretty good. So what we want to do from there, go back to gallery, tap select, tap on our porthole chroma key asset, tap share, and then from there we're going to do a PNG and save it to the Photos app. Now before we go editing in LumaFusion, I'm going to introduce you to an app you may or may not have seen before. It's called Motion Leap by Lighttricks. And what it allows you to do, bring still images in. I've got the 3 different images loaded up with their chroma key assets placed. What we're going to do is just add a little bit of video motion to each of them. We'll start off with the landscape rock face. And what I want to do with this is I want to tap on an element. I'm just going to navigate along the list until I find the one I'm looking for, which is birds. And there it's there. And then this one here, I'm going to place up in the corner so it looks like seagulls or geese, or I think the seagulls, are passing by. Now I'm just going to shrink them down a little bit, just so the scale's kind of more in keeping. Now what I want to do now, I'll just move it up a wee bit, there we go, is export. Choose 16:9. I'll just place it so we see more of the sky than anything else. The duration, I'm going to make 12 seconds, and the quality, I'm going to keep to 4K. Tap export, it will quickly process the animation and the movement, and then it automatically saves it to your Photos app. But if you want to, you can also save it to files. So for example, you can tap save to files, go to the appropriate folder for these video assets, tap on the name, and we'll call this landscape Chromakey asset. But we'll take out the underscores, they're not really needed. And then tap done, tap save, and that's that one done. We can then go back to our gallery and we'll do the MacBook. Now with this one, we're going to add a couple of things. First of all, we're going to go for element, and just working my way along the list. In fact, we can sort of scroll down the way. I think I'm going to look for a butterfly element. Now I could either have some butterflies fluttering around the front end of the screen, that looks quite pretty, or we could have one sitting on the keyboard. I think we'll go for them flying around. The other thing I'm going to also add is a little bit of bokeh to this goldy sculpture-y thing on the left hand side. So we'll just navigate until we find something appropriate. And I'm thinking probably that one. And then we'll just shrink it down a bit, place it over here, shrink it down a little bit more. Just angle it off a little bit. There we go, we'll lower the opacity somewhat so it blends in. Now, is there anything else that I need? I don't think so, I think that'll do. What you can end up doing is adding too many elements into an image and when you're turning it into a video, and we've got enough here to sell it as a particular Chromakey asset. Again, let's tap export, 16:9. We will probably crop it into the top edge of the table and give ourselves a little bit more room up top. Go for 4K, and once again I'm going to take it to 12 seconds. Tap export, that then processes it out and renders it and automatically saves it to your Photos app. But once again, you've got the option to save to files, and we can put it into video assets. And again, we'll just call this MacBook Chromakey asset. Tap done, tap save. That's saved out to 2 locations. And then the final one is the porthole. Now we're going to do something a little bit different with this one. We've got some 3D motion down here. Now yes, I could do this as a keyframe in LumaFusion, but I prefer to do it in here because it's a smoother motion. So we're going to tap on ES02. Now what we don't want are these fireworks. So we're going to dial them back down to 0. And then if we tap on the 3 dots in the thumbnail, you can now see we can play around with the motion. So we could have this sort of rocking back and forward motion, something a little bit more side to side. You've got this one, or even this one. But I think we'll go for either FX03 or the first one. Maybe increase its strength a little bit, take it up to 6. That looks like a boat rising and falling to the waves. Again, quite happy with that. So we'll go back out of here and we want to add another element. So we tap on element, and this time I'm going to navigate towards some fish, because I think some fish will look quite cool. And I think we'll have a little school of clownfish, little Finding Nemos. Place them over the window, just offset them, press play, and you can see you get the motion and the fish as a separate entity. Quite happy with that. So tap export, 16:9. We'll keep it this time more towards the upper part of the canvas. Increase to 12 seconds. Still going with 4K. Tap export. And then of course, save to files. Tap on that, and again we'll just call this Porthole Chroma-Key Asset. Tap done. And this time it's actually memorized where it should be, which is good. Save, and that's it now saved. And now we can go to LumaFusion and put these guys together. Okay, now that we're back in LumaFusion, I'm just going to reposition my UI. I've got a clip here that is from Storyblocks, it's stock, and we're going to use this Aurora Northern Lights as our background for our landscape asset. So I'm just going to tap and drag and drop the landscape asset, and as you can see it fits into the 12 seconds, and then we'll just tap the pencil icon, navigate to our color presets, go to our key icon, and then we want to tap on green screen. Now we'll sort the positioning of the sky in a second or two, but first of all we're going to just reduce the edge blur radius and just play with the spill a little bit. Around about there, I reckon. That looks pretty good. We tap back. There's the sky doing its thing. We want to go to Northern Lights below, tap number 1 on the keyboard or press the pencil icon. All I'm going to do is just increase the size until our little human being starts to disappear, and then reposition it so that our cliff rock face in the foreground obscures the silhouette in the background. That's looking pretty good. Now the one thing you'll notice when you do this is that obviously there's a colour mismatch. So how do we deal with that? Well, there's a couple of things you could do. Highlight the landscape Chromakey asset. We could obviously go into color presets. We can tap on original, and you can of course add a bit of green into the situation. Maybe a bit of cyan, a bit of blue to cool things down. And that helps, but it's not 100% foolproof. I'm going to show you a little technique that I tend to use now and again to color match the two different video elements. I'm going to get into titles. I've got this Chromakey green rectangle. Now you literally could start with a plain title and do this, but I've got this here so we might as well use it. Drag and drop it onto the second additional video layer. And then what we're going to do is tap the pencil icon, go to titles, and I'm just literally using this to create a rectangle that covers the whole of the screen. We're going to tap face color, and we're then going to come into a green, almost aqua, somewhere around about there, a bluey green, and a blue, predominantly green, like so. And then we'll come back out of that. Obviously that's hiding that, so we need to go into our frame and fit, go to blending, go to blend mode, and then change to either overlay or soft light. See which one works best. I would probably go for soft light, but we'll just look at overlay. So if you wanted something a lot more dramatic, you'd use overlay. I think soft light actually works better. And then you can just dial down the opacity a little bit, and then if we go back to the main timeline, you can see that color matches a lot better than before. I just switch it off. There's before, and there's after. So it gives you a kind of nighttime vibe, obviously. And we'll just play it through. It's looking pretty cool. So that's how you get the landscape Chromakey asset, and the only thing that's not realistic, obviously, is the birds in the corner are lit from underneath. They would probably be more kind of in silhouette than anything else, but we don't always do these things for photorealism, and sometimes we can take a bit of creative license. And that looks pretty nice. So next, we will take a look at our laptop screen and see what we can do with that. Again, we're going to repeat the same processes as before. Drag and drop our MacBook asset into the timeline. Start it about there. And then we want to go to our color presets. I'm pressing number 5 on the keyboard this time. And go to our keys and then green screen. And you can see it's fitting in. So we want to kind of keep the edge blur radius this time, because if we take it down to 0, you can see it doesn't look very realistic. But if I increase it back to the default 2, it has a little bit more realism about it. And just play with the spill suppression. It's looking pretty good as it is. I'll maybe take the blur down to 1.5. In fact, no, it's still soft. 1.90, being picky, but there we go. And then we just come back out. We need to go to our video clip below, tap on the pencil icon this time, just to be a bit different. Go to frame and fit. And all we're going to do now is reduce the size of the video clip and then just take it in from the corners. And there we go. Go back to our desktop. And there we have what was a still. It's now got a little bit of animation in it. And there you go. That looks pretty cool. We'll just shrink that down to there. Now another thing you could do, just to kind of give it a little bit more realism, although you've got to be gentle with this, is go back into number 5 for color presets, go to blurs, and then add 5 Gaussian blur, and then you want to reduce this down to literally 1 or 2, can't decide. We'll just go with 1, and that just takes the edge off of the video so it doesn't look too sharp, because sometimes when you see these effects being done, even like on the big screen, the insert just looks a little bit too crisp, so you want to kind of keep things mellow. And we go back. Now at this point, what we probably want to do is export this out and then bring it back in. I'll show you why in a second. So if we just go 4K, standard 50 megabits per second, tap that. And then we go to our Photos app, all photos and videos. And then we can just drag and drop that back on. And then the only thing I would do after this is just a very, very simple keyframe. So starting at, let's say if we go in about a second, drop a keyframe, and then we go right to the very end, and we increase the size subtly. So I'm probably going to bring it up to around about 105. There we go. And then if we go back to the beginning, play it through, you'll see we just got a very subtle, gentle push in for just a little bit of movement. Again, we've taken a still, we've added some animation elements to it, and just brought it to life a little bit more. Would I use butterflies? Maybe not, but they kind of work. There's some nice motion blur on them. Not too distracting from what's going on the screen. And it helps sell the realism, and then you've got the movement of the push in afterwards, which is always a nice way to control the view. And that's that one done. But finally, we'll take a look at the porthole. If you remember, we exported the video with our little clownfish Nemos in the window. And that's fine, well and good. I had an idea of doing a kind of underwater scene which they would have fitted into, but I decided on using this clip instead. Again, it's just a standard piece of stock footage. So to make it work a bit better, I exported another clip without the fish so that I could then import it on top of the birds flying. So I made some changes to what I'm doing just to make it fit the clip. So once again, we'll tap the pencil this time, go to our keyer, green screen, and just check the spill suppression, go a bit there, edge blur. We'll take it down to about 0.4. That kind of works. Now, just so that we have more emphasis on what's happening through the window rather than the porthole, I'm just going to go in and add some blur, but it doesn't need to be much blur. About 1 or 2, just so that it makes more sense looking out the way as if that's what we're focusing on. And we play things back. See how that motion helps? So I'm going to go back to our birds flying above the sea, tap on number 1 on the keyboard, and we've got a little bit of wiggle room to shrink it down somewhat, show a bit more of the video clip itself. And then the only other thing that I'm going to do after that is go back to the porthole, go back into our color presets, tap on original. I'm just going to play with the brightness and just bring it down. So we'll go down to 0.8, and then the highlight, like so. Let me go back. Again, that just draws the emphasis to what's going on outside. With shots like this, you don't really want to have on screen for too long. You just want it to sell the effect of what's going on, tell the story, and move on to the next clip. So I would probably just hold this for 1.5, 2 seconds at most, and then just move on. I certainly wouldn't hold it for 12 seconds. That's just a bit too lengthy. But you can see it works. So there you go. We've taken 3 different elements, the landscape, the MacBook, and the porthole, pretty easy shapes on the whole, and injected a little bit of movement into them, whether it be birds flying in the corner, a bouquet, and butterflies, or in the case of the porthole, we started out with the fish and also the movement of the ship, but we ended up just with the movement of the ship going up and down. You could, of course, have done this in LumaFusion using keyframes, and that would be absolutely fine, but at this point I just think the motion art side of things with Motion Elite is just a little bit smoother, so that's why I used that rather than keyframes bouncing about too much. I'm very much a believer in working smarter, not harder. I use whatever I've got available to me to get the job done. So there we go. If you've enjoyed this video tutorial, by all means give it a thumbs up. If I've earned your subscription this week, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of you out there who are watching the videos but haven't subscribed just yet. And of course, ring the bell to be notified of the next video tutorial. And I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.